eduKARIJERA. Recept za uspeh. Ovo je bar gde možete popiti pivo jedinstvenog ukusa, bez konzervansa i ostalih aditiva. Ono što razlikuje ovaj bar od ostalih jeste što istovremeno možete da gledate proces proizvodnje. Ovo mesto se zove Pivara Kompas i nalazi se u Kumodraškoj ulici u Beogradu. Idejni tvorac i vlasnik, kao i glavni stručnjak za proizvodnju je Amerikanac Džejson Pol, srpski zet koji je odlučio da se sa porodicom preseli u našu prestonicu. Kada je Džejson došao iz Amerike, imao je ideju da u Srbiji napravi nešto jedinstveno i to mu je pošlo za rukom. U Pivari Kompas proizvodi se nekoliko različitih vrsta i tipova piva specifičnog ukusa. Ukoliko niste probali kompas piva, ne možete sa sigurnošću tvrditi da ste pili zaista dobro pivo. Kalifornija, Ekstra, Indija, kao i pojedina koja se proizvode u odnosu na godišnja doba. Proizvodnja piva je izuzetno složen proces. Ostvariti uspeh u proizvodnji i prodaji je još složeniji, ali za prave stručnjake to ne predstavlja problem.
Dobrodošli u još jednu eduKARIJERu. Ova epizoda biće onako suprotstavljena svim izgovorima za one koji kažu da u Srbiji nemoguće napraviti dobar posao, a mi ćemo vam dokazati da je američki san moguće živeti i u Beogradu. This is the place when the magic starts.
This is the production room. We've got a 10 hectoliter system with four 2,500 liter tanks for fermentation.
This is for how many people or beers?
Oh, a lot of beers.
Oh.
So we could do about 8,000 liters a month if we need to.
Okay. Can you explain me?
Well, you know what? Let's walk back to the mini brewery, and I'll show you the process on the mini brewery, and then I'll explain it how we size it up and work towards making it bigger.
Take me.
This is the mini brewery I built in 2012, 2013, and with parts from here and from America, and basically. This is a simple way to show you how to make beer. This is the hot liquor ton. I'll show you on the big one how it translates the same way. You have a hot liquor ton, which basically means hot water.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the mash tun, and in the bottom there is a filter.
Filter, okay. For what filter?
Slod. For malt, slod. And then this is the boiling kettle. Okay. So what happens is we start with some hot water at a certain temperature.
Okay.
That temperature determines what kind of mouthfeel the body of the beer will have.
Here is...
Exactly. So we're watching temperature. So we'll put a certain amount of water, depending on the amount of slod that we put in there, at that temperature, and it sits at that temperature. And what happens is it changes the starches to sugars, and that's all the sweetness that you get from beer. Okay. So then, after that's done, we will take that, what's called, slodovina in Srpski, and then we'll move that into this one using the pumps.
Okay.
So we have a pump, it comes out here, goes in here, gets pumped into this one. Then we use hot water to get the rest of those sugars left on the malt, or the slod, and then we do it again, and bring that over here. Now, it's all about cooking. It's cooking the slodovina. So now we start the boil. Once this gets to boiling, we'll start our time clock. Usually we run 90 minutes with our, and there's several reasons for that, but then we'll add our hops, our khmel, at given times, and different types of hops at different times. And that bitterness offsets the sweetness from the malt we put together.
How many hours or days I need?
This is about 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yes. And then we'll put this into a fermenter, and then put in the yeast, and let it sit for 15 days at a specific temperature.
Yeah.
And so that's basically...
From the beginning to the end of all process making beer is 15 days?
Yeah, 15 days. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's a relatively simple process, but as you know, anything that you say is simple, it always gets complicated.
Without errors.
Well, and sometimes the errors are magical. You know, sometimes you find something that you didn't, and there's where the art is. It's like once you figure out how to do something like that, then you can use that in the future as a tool later. I made the beer do this by changing a temperature or changing a temperature in the mash tun, and you figure that out, and that's the art part of it.
When you finish this process, we are going where?
Well, once we have the beer, we would test the beer and see how it is. Do we like it? Do we want to go further with it? Do we want to change it? Is it good enough to make a big batch? Now, if we said, okay, yeah, it's great, we would go over to the big batch, and we'll start with the water side.
This is the next step.
Right. So starting the process for a large batch, this is our water section.
Okay.
And so city water comes in, and we do a couple of different things. We use city water filtered, and then as necessary with the type of beer, we would add reverse osmosis water. Reverse osmosis water is water with like a blank sheet of paper. There's no minerals in it.
Without
we'd mix,
anything.
right. So we would mix as needed. This tank is for all basically the water for the beer. So this is the mixing tank. This water, the omexina, that is for the steam kettle that's in the back. That's how we power the heat for our brewery. So that has to be all reverse osmosis water, so there's nothing in it. So for water, this is the cold water tank.
Cold
and
hot.
Exactly. So the day before we're going to brew, we prep the water. We would basically make the water the mix that we wanted to. Then we would fill this tank, which is 2 tons of water, and then another 2 tons of water here. We'll start the cooling process on that to bring that temperature down to between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius. This tank gets put up closer to 60 degrees. Okay. Then we fill from this tank into, this is the kettle. So this is our mash tun where we put the slod and mix the water, just like we did on the other one, the center pot. Okay, so then we're ready to start the brewing process. But now we need to put together our malt mix, depending on what we're making, how we mix darker malts and lighter malts together to get what we're looking for in our beers. So that is done usually outside. If it's a nice day, we pull the mlin outside and basically crush it, but we don't pulverize, because on a grain of ječam slad, we use the outside of the grain as a filter. So that's what you just want to crack it so you can get to the sugars inside the malt, or the starches to convert the sugars. So we will then add, at the temperature that we're looking at, we'll add the malt, and that will sit for probably an hour, hour and a half, and that changes all those starches to sugars. Okay. Then we're going to go over to the lauter tank.
This is filter.
Yes, that's actually just been cleaned, and that will go in the bottom of this tank. What happens is after the malt is converted into sugars, we use the pump, we pump it into this tank, and then we let it sit for a little bit. And then we will filter out all that sladovina. We call it wort in English. And then that gets transferred back to the original tank. So yeah, you're constantly switching valves and moving.
Circling.
Yes, exactly. And then we'll add
Circle of life.
Totally. and so
Beer life.
Yes. And so the hot water, then we use that just like we did over there on the small unit. We add hot water to get all those sugars off of that. We do it 2 more times after we've taken the initial sladovina out. And so then we get all of that, and then we start the brewing process. So we turn up the heat, and start boiling to finish off the wort. Add hops as necessary for the bittering, and then we'll start the cooling process. So then we go from
longer process is cooling.
No, not necessarily. It can go from 45 minutes to an hour and a half typically if everything is good.
I was thinking that beer need to calm and.
No, well it does. We usually let it sit for 15 minutes after we moved it from one place to the next. So after the boil, we actually move it back into the lauter tun again because we have all the hops in there, so a lot of particulate, talog. So we let that sit in here and then we filter it out and put it through the heat exchanger right here. So then we start using our cold water. So the cold water comes in this side, the beer comes in this side at 100 degrees. The cold water, remember, is between 5 and 10. So basically the beer comes out, or the sweet wort comes out at between 20 and 15 degrees. And then we pump that straight into the tanks.
Okay.
Yeah, and it goes. We've got a special pipe, a special hose just for that.
I still don't understand, but the beer is great.
Well, it's basically you're pulling all the sugars. Yeah, I'll simplify. So you take that malt, the slod, put the water, you filter all those sugars out of that. That's the sweet part of the beer. Okay, then you start the boil, and you cook it, and you add hops. That's the bitterness. So the magic is between the sweet and the bitter to balance that and to get these good tastes and these great aromas out of it. And then you have to cool it because it's been boiling at 100 degrees. You need to take it down to 20. The reason why, it will kill the yeast if you put it in at 100 degrees. So the yeast only live at a certain temperature range. It's a lot of things going on at once. And you have to really record everything you're doing constantly, because if you do something different, the beer might turn out different, and you need to know what you did last time to correct what you did, hopefully. But you're also dealing with organic matter. You've got ječam slad, you've got hmel, your water changes during the year. So you need to know what your ingredients are doing in order to, and that's the science part, where you have to really look at what you have and how to adjust to make the beer consistent. Because people get used to one kind of beer, that's what they want. They want that consistency.
They want that taste every time.
Yes, that's what you get known for. That's how your beer brand becomes known, is that you get known for a certain way of making beers. For me, it's really interesting, and I think that's why microbrewers are so successful, because everybody's making different things, different tastes, and it's great because people have different tastes. Brought the things that I learned from America making beer on a homebrew level, and then mixed it with the ingredients here in Europe, and trying to make really good Serbian beer, solid beer.
When you came to Serbia, and how it was when you start to make this beer? Or
I came here in 2010, and there was no beer scene. And I was frustrated because I was so used to my India Pale Ales, my Russian Imperial Stouts, having a multitude of choices with the American microbrew explosion. And so I was kind of depressed, and well, how do I do this? I don't know how to get slad. I don't know how to get hmel. I don't know anything here. And I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture. So I was trying to do what I do in the United States, which is fly helicopters, but that was, I couldn't do that either here. There were many helicopters, and most of those positions, those pilot positions, were for military and police here, and I wasn't a citizen, and I'm just Zet here. So it was tough at the beginning, but so I had to do something. And so I was working on just building a home brewing setup, which we still have in the back is our test bed for beers. And from that happened, I finally built that about 2013, and that's when some of the other microbreweries started up. And my wife said, well, you make great beer, let's build a brewery. And so that led to building this, and it's not just me, it's a team. You cannot do this by yourself. You cannot. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of planning, and a lot of troubleshooting. So you run into a wall, and then you either turn right or left.
Is it hard in Serbia to make your own business?
I would say, you know, my wife is the quiet part and the financial part and the deal maker, because I could not do that by myself here. The business culture is different than America, and definitely, from my perspective, much tougher.
For success, what's the most important for the business success today here? What do you think?
Head down, keep going, no matter what. Because it's tough. You can't stop. You must move forward and solve the problem in front of you, because it's endless problems when you own a business.
Nadam se da smo i u ovoj epizodi uspeli da pronađemo idealan recept za uspeh koji bi vama odgovarao ili vas motivisali da budete uporni. Što bi naš Džejson, Srbin američkog porekla, rekao, ne odustajte i budite uporni.
eduKARIJERA. Recept za uspeh.